Hey there, I'm Tom, also known as Bamboo Leaves. Have you ever wanted to create your own sample packs? Do you like the textured and organic drum sounds from artists such as Bonobo, Fortet and John Hopkins? Well, today I'm going to show you how you can create your own Foley samples to use in your tracks so that you could sound something like this. Or even this. So stick around to the end of this video to find out how I created those organic sounding drum sounds from scratch. Making your own samples will contribute towards creating your own signature sound and making unique flavors within your music. Links for the samples and project files used within this tutorial can be found in the description down below, so check those out if you're interested. So with that out of the way, let's get to the first step in building up your own Foley sample packs. When it comes to recording your sounds in the first place, you're going to want to find the highest quality microphone that you have access to so that you set yourself up for the best chances of success. Now, don't worry if you don't have access to some expensive high-end microphone. I'm only using a MXL 990 and that actually is pretty low end when it comes to mics. Ideally, you'd have different types of microphone for different use cases and perhaps two for stereo content, but I'm just going to stick with the one condenser mic for this tutorial. Next, you're going to want to set yourself up in a location that is as dead as possible so that you can avoid as much unwanted room noise as possible. By dead space, I mean as little noise, reverb and hard surfaces. I don't really have access to a dead space in my house, so I set myself up to record on my sofa to mute off any of those sound reflections. Then you want to make sure that you set the audio input gain on your interface to an appropriate level. Make sure to experiment with the different sounds you're planning to record. Get it as loud as you can without it clipping on the input so that you have nice loud samples without audible distortion. Now we get to the more performance aspect of the recording. You're going to want to experiment to find different sounds using different items that you may find around the house. For example, I used a cup of pens, 2 toothpaste boxes, some keys, my hands, a sheet of paper, and a pen. You're going to want to be choosing sounds that resemble hi-hats, claps, shakers, percussion, so make sure that you're choosing sounds that have a frequency spectrum and transient character that resemble those sounds. And once you're ready to go, hit record on your DAW. You're going to want to hit the items in interesting ways and at different angles, maybe throw them against different things to get lots of different sounds and textures out of the items that you've got. Try recording closer and further away from the mic to get different variations of the sounds. Make sure you get lots of different takes so that you can select the best samples later on. Next, we're going to look at the post-processing process, so let's jump over to the DAW for this next part. Now, you'll hopefully have an array of different hits, each varying in their sounds. Let me play a few of these tracks for you now. So there's some toothpaste boxes, there's some pens, got some keys, and then some outside Atmos. So that was just me sticking my microphone out onto the balcony and just catching the noise of the ambience outside. So next what you're going to want to do is go through each of these different tracks and zoom right in, and you'll be selecting all these different parts, all these different hits, and you'll be chopping them. So once you've kind of gone through and cut these down, you're going to want to listen and make sure that you choose the most appropriate, most interesting sounds that you've managed to capture. So then hopefully, once you've cut all of those down and you've selected the best sounds out of them, you're going to then collapse them down so that you have something that looks a bit like this. And say, for example, the keys. You then zoom in, make sure that these lead-ins and fade-outs are an appropriate level. So maybe you want to kind of cut that one in a little bit, make sure that it's a bit tighter so you don't have too much of a lead-in. And then for all of those, you can just click on the whole track and go into the side and fade in just a small amount and fade out by a little bit more. So now each of these tracks, they have a fade so that you avoid all those pops and clicks that might be sort of lingering from where you've chopped those samples. Pretty good so far. So next what we should do is introduce some mid to light processing, such as compression, EQ, saturation, and limiting. So this is so that you have an even sound that has lots of body and punch, and it kind of comes up to that standard loudness that you'd expect from a sample pack. However, make sure not to over-process them, because you want to leave a little bit of room and a little bit of space for further processing for yourself or other people who might be using your sample pack in the future, and you can always add more processing on, but you can't take it away once you've bounced it down. So let's have a listen to these toothpaste boxes with all of those processing parts on them now. So without any of them, they'd sound like this. And then with them all again, the keys without any processing, and then all of that processing on there. So it's just a bit crunchier, it's louder, and it sort of has a bit more of a professional feel about it. Up next is exporting and sorting your samples. We're going to want to flatten these samples with all of that processing applied. To do that, we can just go over to each of these samples and bounce them in place like so. Make sure that you leave the bypass effects plugins not selected, otherwise it will just do the audio and it won't have that processing flattened like we want to right now. Okay, and then what you can do is just make sure you drag all of those back onto the same audio track. They'll probably have created a new audio track for each of those bounces, but you just want to get them all lined up. Okay, and there we have it. We have a track there that has all of that processing applied, and it's flattened and it's got all of the appropriate fades. So now if we just listen to this plain audio, I've repeated that process for all of those different samples. So I've got the box hits bounce, the cup of pens bounce, the keys bounce, the paper crumple bounce, and all of the other bounces. Now you want to get yourself a folder structure set up on your computer. I've gone for sound source on this one to keep it simple. So I've got my atmosphere, my box hits, my claps, my clicks. And then what you're going to want to do is just go to your various hits. So I've got my box hits. Just grab all of those and simply drag them into your folder structure. Then you want to go through and make sure that they're all named as appropriate, and then you should end up with something like this where you have all of your different hits within those folder structures. Optionally, you could create yourself some artwork so that you can kind of have a professional feel to your sample pack. If you want to download the samples from this tutorial, check the links in the description below. Okay, so as promised, here's a couple of tracks that I used my samples to build upon a interesting organic sounding beat. First up, we've got this kind of lo-fi boppy feeling track. So I've just got this 808 kick that is not part of those Foley drums that I created, but that's the only sample that you're hearing in all of this, in all of these drums that did not come from these sample packs. Without that kick, so I'm using a couple of those claps. I've applied a bit more EQ. I've bussed that one off to a reverb. You know, I will have shortened the sample right down, and I had a little bit of a fade out, maybe fade in occasionally, to make sure that it was a bit more snappy. You know, some box hits in there on the snare. This key sample, so I think somewhere I would have taken one of those keys. Yeah, so this is the full key sample. And I just went and chopped it at this section, and then I put those on the offbeats. So it sounds like this. And And it gives that nice sort of organic, natural sound. And again, I've got this second track that's more of like a natural lo-fi kind of beat. Let's listen to the drums for that. So I got those table hits that are dancing around. Got some keys for shakers. Got those box hits and claps and clicks. Yeah, so that's just giving you a taster of the kind of things that you can do with these samples. And, you know, it's quite satisfying to know that those are completely my sounds. That's something that I've created, and it's my own unique flavor on this kind of little lo-fi beat there. I'll probably do a more in-depth breakdown of these tracks in a future video. So if that's something you want to see, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to this channel or downloading the pack that I've created using the links in the description down below. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one.